Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I am your host, JR, and today we're looking at a bracketology update of Week 16 as we enter in. In this episode, I'm going to break down every Big Ten team status heading into the NCAA tournament from teams that are locked in with impressive resumes, talking about whether or not they can get a high seeding and what encompasses that in this coming week. Teams that are teetering on the bubble right now and kind of what needs to happen there. I'll give you my prediction of maybe some wins they need to get and stuff like that. And then we're gonna look at the teams that are already projected out as well and give you a little bit of insight into them. So I'm gonna do my best to give you in-depth analysis in a shortened video where you hear about every single team, but at the same time it's also not 2 hours long because that can happen when you talk about every single team. So whether you're watching on YouTube or tuning in for a podcast, please go ahead, like, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, do all that stuff. We appreciate you listening, watching, whatever you do, and let me know in the comments what you think about your team seeding, what kind of chances they have to make the NCAA tournament. If you're watching on YouTube, you can comment there. If you're watching on Spotify, you can also comment there, and I do my best to try and check as many of those as I can. There are a good amount of comments, so can't get to all of them, but I do my best. All right, let's get started with the Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin has truly set the tone for the conference this week after stepping into Mackey Arena and beating Purdue by 10 points, 94-84. The Badgers made a bold statement. Not only did this win bolster their resume at the perfect time, but it also catapulted them into a conversation as possible national championship contenders. They are currently ranked as a 3 seed in the committee's top 16 with an overall ranking of 11. They've shown that when it matters most, they deliver. John Tonji's explosive 32-point performance was icing on the cake. With tough games on the horizon, facing Illinois on Tuesday, an inconsistent team, and then Oregon, a team that just has won 2 home games in a row after getting out of their slump on Saturday. The Badgers need to maintain this momentum, and if they do, they could be looking at a potential 2 seed coming up in the next rankings. Their stellar week positions them not just as participants, but as genuine title contenders. Next up, let's look at the Purdue Boilermakers. Purdue entered this week with high expectations leading in the Big Ten. Initially, they were the highest seeded Big Ten team in the top 16 reveal, ranked as the number 7 team with a projected 2 seed. This was after their 2-point road loss to Michigan earlier in the week, but following the 7 seed or the 7 ranking in the top 16, they suffered a tough loss at home to Wisconsin, which we just talked about a little bit, which shifted their narrative a little bit. These setbacks have dropped Purdue to most likely a 3 seed right now, but we'll have to wait and see what the top 16 comes out with in their next reveal, which I believe is on Saturday. Despite these bumps, Purdue remains a formidable force. They'll need to shake off these recent losses quickly as they need to head into their next matchup against Michigan State on Tuesday, followed by a game at Indiana on Sunday. They are absolutely not at risk of missing the NCAA tournament by any means this late in the year, but Purdue's challenge now is to regain consistency, prove that they can bounce back from adversity to remain a highly seeded team, get some favorable matchups so that way they can make it deep in the NCAA tournament. Okay, let's shift our focus now on the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan has had quite the week, making some noise in the Big Ten. Not as much as Wisconsin did, but they did win both their games, and they showed they are a team that deserves a 3 seed in the committee's next top 16 rankings. They kicked off their week with a close win, 75-73. 33. I want to be close. 75-73 home win over Purdue, a victory that not only gave them their first place in the standings, but it also sent a clear message about their competitive fire. People were questioning them with so many close wins, and then they go out and they beat a Purdue team like that at home. It was a big win for them and really solidified themselves as the number 1 team in the conference, not just in the standings, but in the minds of everybody else. Then came to a nail-biting road victory against Ohio State, where they eked out an 86-83 victory. Wins like these, especially on the road, build a robust resume in the eyes of the selection committee. They were given the number 14 overall seed after they beat Purdue, so it'll be interesting to see if Michigan's win over Ohio State is enough to give them a 3 seed. Ohio State, not a great record, but they are statistic dynamo at this point. They've been pretty much top 30 in KenPom net, all those things, pretty much all year long. So at first place in the Big Ten, their resilience, grit, and first-year head coach Desi May have turned heads and made them one of the most intriguing and most interesting teams to watch as we approach tournament time. Moving a bit further down in the bracket, we come to the Michigan State Spartans, and Michigan State, or the Spartans, had an unusual week. They weren't in the committee's top 16 after losing Indiana, but are still projected to be a 5 seed. Michigan State's season held so much promise of winning the Big Ten just a few weeks ago, but after losing 3 of their last 5, winning the Big Ten, it's still in sight, but absolutely no certainty at this point. They kicked off the week with a home loss to Indiana, a result that initially raised a bunch of concerns as Indiana played the zone all game, and a coach who has been pushed out basically by Indiana and their fans denied Tom Izzo of the record of Big Ten wins in his career. However, they rebounded with a double-digit win against Illinois, where they didn't really control that game until the last 8.5 minutes when they went on a 15-0 run to win the game. It was impressive, their grit and determination to get to that point, and also how they closed out that game with really good defense on Illinois and also the ability to score like they were able to. Things aren't getting any easier, though, for Michigan State as they face Purdue on Tuesday and Michigan on Friday. They still have 2 more chances to face Michigan to end the season, so they'll have their chances to go after the Big Ten title and win it, but Michigan looks like a really good team, and beating them twice is not going to be an easy task this year. With their Big Ten title hopes in the balance, Michigan State needs to win these games that could also propel them to being a top 4 seeded team in the NCAA tournament. It is a crucial week for the Spartans. Next on the list are the Maryland Terrapins. Maryland has had one of the more impressive weeks in the Big Ten. They are the first of 3 teams that are projected to be a 6 seed. The Terrapins have shown that they belong in the conversation of being a dangerous team in the tournament. A highlight for Maryland was their commanding 26-point win over Iowa, where they were down at halftime, but then proceeded to outscore Iowa by 30 points in the second half. 54-24 was the score of just the second half. It was an impressive win for them there. Add that to their resilient road win against Nebraska, and you've got a team that's proving they can win at home and on the road. After starting the Big Ten 0-4 on the road, they have won 3 of their last 4 road games, which is huge for this team and impressive to the committee and to the numbers and all that stuff. Maryland's only game this week is against USC on Thursday, which is pivotal to keep momentum going so they can have some rest heading into the week, and then a team that is facing harder opponents the week coming after. A team that has had their week turned upside down are the Illinois Fighting Illini. Okay, bad joke. I get it. Sorry, Illinois fans. That's the only joke I'll make, okay? Illinois had a week that basically defined their season, right? Projected as a 6 seed, the Illini enjoyed a convincing win over UCLA, a game that on paper looked clean, but it had its fair share of close moments as well. If you watch that game, it was a little dicey at times. Unfortunately, that high was short-lived in a heartbreaking loss to Michigan State, where Illinois blew a 16-point lead, exposing their issues on offense and their rhythm. Key contributors like Trey White faded in the rotation, only a few minutes in that game. Dre Gibbs Lawhorn was the same way, and as a result, the Illini find themselves with a challenging schedule ahead. Road wins at Wisconsin and Duke loom large. Duke obviously won't affect the Big Ten race, but now they are also without Morez Johnson. They need to find consistency quickly if they're going to build a resume that can sustain a favorable tournament seed. Our third team with a projected 6th seed are the UCLA Bruins. Despite their recent struggles, most notably a loss to Illinois that snapped a 7-game win streak, the Bruins remain in the NCAA tournament mix. They managed to claw their way back to a narrow victory over Indiana at Assembly Hall. Don't care how bad Indiana is. That's still a tough place to play. It's impressive going in there. Those fans are rabid and they're very motivated, showcasing their ability to win on the road when needed. With most of their remaining 5 games expected to be winnable except for a challenging matchup against Purdue on February 28th, UCLA must keep their focus sharp. Their season's success hinges on their ability to regain that momentum and continue delivering strong performances as they edge closer and closer to the postseason. Switching gears, let's now get into a little bit of the bubble teams. I do want to remind you really fast, though, go on over to cbbanalytics.com and check out their stats they have there. You can get a free account, or if you want to pay for an account, you can use my code HUDDLE, HUDDLE, for $30 off. I appreciate it. Go check out CBB Analytics. Now, back to Oregon. Oregon isn't on the bubble, but if they hadn't won both their games this week, they probably would have been. Oregon is a projected 8 seed. The Ducks found their footing this week at home. Wins over Northwestern and Rutgers, two important victories that help stabilize their resume. Strangely enough, they have played better. They have played. They have played with 4 consecutive losses away from home. They will have a chance to snap that losing streak coming up at Iowa, and then a daunting game that will be much more difficult at Wisconsin. Their last 2 home games were great, but if the Ducks want to stay off the bubble, they need to win at least one of those 2 games. Now, let's check in with the Ohio State Buckeyes. The Buckeyes are projected as a 10 seed, and although they went 1-1, their week was rather impressive. I think if you're looking at it from an objective point of view, you could say what Ohio State did this past week was impressive. Ohio State kicked off with an emphatic 93-69 win over Washington at home, which showcased their deadly 3-point shooting and the clean execution of their game plan. However, a fiercely contested rivalry game against Michigan ended up in a narrow 86-83 loss for Bruce Thornton airballed a 4-foot floater to basically end the game. Despite being great at home, a game that, despite being a great game, has left some Ohio State fans wondering if their first-year head coach is the guy for the job. Thankfully, this predicament makes it pretty easy to tell which Buckeye fans are basketball fans and those who are more football fans than just fair weather when it comes to basketball. The Buckeyes have faced so much adversity this year with injuries and players being away from the team and on leave. Right now, one of their star transfers that they brought in, Michi Johnson, is not even with the team, and so just the idea of them being in the tournament speaks to the job that Jake Diebler has done this year. Ohio State's resume remains heavily dependent on wins against quality opponents, with 3 of their remaining 5 games on the road, including trips to UCLA and USC. They need to win at least one of their road games and both of their home games to make the tournament. Closely following Ohio State are the Nebraska Cornhuskers, also projected as a 10 seed. Nebraska's season has been a series of ups and downs. After a tough home loss to Maryland, they bounced back with a come-from-behind win over Northwestern. A substantial loss like that could have been problematic and would have been a huge blow to their chances of making the tournament. So the way they were able to be down by 20 and then pull back in that game, it speaks a lot about the team and what they were able to do, their grit, determination, and how much they do truly want this NCAA tournament berth. They pulled it off. They got the W. That's all you can say about that, right? The record of 6-7 in quad 1 games and a 2-1 tally in quad 3 contests illustrates that they're hanging in there. But at this point, every win counts for the Cornhuskers. With only 1 game at Penn State this week, they need to win that game. They should win it. They need to win that game and gear up for a battle at home versus Michigan on next Monday night, which could give them a huge boost in securing a safe path into the NCAA tournament. For our last team on the bubble, let's talk about the Indiana Hoosiers. For Indiana, it's a very, very tough spot. Projected as one of the first 4 out currently. Earlier in the week, they did manage to pull off a signature win against Michigan State, a performance that briefly brought them back into contention and does highlight a few things for this team, right? Like, this does give this team hope and gives the fans maybe a little bit of promise here. However, they couldn't sustain that momentum as a heartbreaker against UCLA happened, where they squandered multiple late opportunities that left them with a 1-1 week with the key one matchups they faced that week, with a 2-9 record against top tier opponents and a resume that doesn't quite measure up. It's looking like the Hoosiers can only afford to drop one more game in their schedule to end the year if they want to find themselves in the NCAA tournament. They have 5 games remaining. The way I look at it, they need to win 4 of those 5 if they want to get into the tournament. Next up, USC. The Trojans find themselves in an extremely challenging position this season with where they're at and with the current projection placing them outside even the bubble. USC's week started on a promising note, a 92-67 win over Penn State. Things were looking good. Things were looking like they were going to stay on the bubble. They had good momentum. Unfortunately, things went south quickly when those darn Gophers and Ben Johnson and Dawson Garcia and Frank Mitchell and what he was able to do in that game came into the USC stadium or the arena and beat them. After establishing a solid lead against Minnesota in the first half, USC lost their composure in the second half and ended up losing 69-66 at home, and really hurts their chances of making the Big Ten or making the NCAA tournament. For bubble teams, blowing a lead like this is almost unforgivable. With an already fragile resume and a difficult remaining schedule, USC's prospects of making the NCAA tournament are looking increasingly bleak at this point. Finally, let's round out the update by just briefly discussing the teams who are projected to be out of the NCAA tournament. You're looking at Iowa, Northwestern, Rutgers, Minnesota, Washington, and Penn State. Several Big Ten teams are now seeing their NCAA tournament hopes dwindle into nothingness. Iowa briefly ignited their optimism with its first conference road win over Rutgers. That was a good point for them. And then they had a good first half against Maryland at Maryland, but that game went south quick in the second half, and it underscores their fragility. Northwestern showed individual promise, yet its offensive shortcomings have left them on the outside looking in the Big Ten tournament. Not just the NCAA tournament, but the Big Ten tournament as well. Rutgers, battling all season, suffered consecutive losses that have effectively dashed their tournament chances, while Minnesota is just battling to make the Big Ten tournament at this point. Right now, they're currently in, and they need to try and stay in if they want to have a chance at the NCAA tournament. They are going to have to win the Big Ten tournament if they want to make it in. Meanwhile, Washington and Penn State, they're both battling to get into the Big Ten tournament as well, and we'll see what they can do moving forward. So there you have it, a comprehensive Week 16 update on Big Ten bracketology. Every game from here on out is must watch. If you're not watching for seeding and Big Ten race, you're also watching for the bubble race and who's going to make it into the Big Ten tournament. It's a whole lot of fun. It's a whole lot of good times to be watching Big Ten basketball right now. Really appreciate you being here. The pressure is mounting with every matchup, and the stakes get higher and higher. Remember to come back here every single week for your Big Ten basketball power rankings on Monday morning, and then your weekly bracketology updates that I try to do either Monday night or Tuesday morning as well. Like, subscribe, listen to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate all that stuff. I'm your host, JR, and this has been the Big Ten Huddle, your home for in-depth Big Ten football and basketball analysis about every Big Ten team every time.